Hello, doing another check-in with The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Schreier, American historian who was contemporaneously was witness to this stuff, did talk to the actual, many of the actual actors in this story of the rise and then fall of the Third Reich, of the Nazi Party, of Hitler, and definitely struck by um, just kind of the nuts and bolts of what Hitler pulled off. Not interested in democracy, had tried this beer hall puts in the 20s, and that had failed abjectly. He learned lessons from people who mentored him that what he needed to do was to gain powerful allies, some of the pillars of German society, pillars that weren't particularly that interested in democracy, in the in this new democracy that had gotten set up after World War One, and those being the army and wealthy industrialists and financiers who were a, not that much interested in democracy, and b, were freaked out by the communists who had scored a giant victory in taking power in Russia. So there was definitely all that happening. Hitler is in these sections is really wooing the army, reassuring them that he is going to make them, he's going to rise up and make a great German state, and that the core of that German state is going to be a powerful, large army, which really appeals to all these army guys who are in a, very much repressed, underfunded at this point army. I mean, and just that, and also the fact that um, they viewed the social democrats who were in power as people who had agreed um, the treaties with the winning side of World War One to really scale back, really scale back the army. And at least with Hitler's push, it's like, oh, they had betrayed you, even though it was the army itself who said at the end of World War One that they couldn't fight any longer. So it was sort of them, but they let the democratic politicians take the blame for Germany's defeat, even though they were just the ones kind of left holding the bag. Um, they have a scene in here of I've just finished, of really Hitler using events to his own advantage. I mean, the key event to his own advantage, the one that's really bumped him up to be, like, at this point in 1930, the second largest um, elected party in the Reichstag. He's decided he's just going to do everything by democratic means. There's no ways he's going to be able to do a violent overthrow, but he's doing things by democratic means. And this, he's had to bide his time because things have been good. And when things are good, people aren't really interested in somebody peddling. Um, it was better in the old days when things are just fine right now, and that, kind of all the anger because they had kind of the they were getting on the right track. If it hadn't been for the Great Depression, Germany would have quite easily had kind of renegotiated the kind of insane um, reparations that they'd been forced to pay. They had gotten renegotiated. They had plenty of loans from the Americans, but then the Great Depression happens, and all the bills came in, and Germany still wasn't particularly that secure financially, completely collapses, massive unemployment, massive discontent, and people angry and looking for someone to blame for it. And Hitler was only too happy to supply the answers to that, and to supply the solution, which is, give all the power to me and I will make Germany a great military power again. um, and there's a scene in here where, the army was very suspicious, rightly so, suspicious of the Nazi Party, banning them from actually being a part of the army, or even like civilians who are, like, in charge of stuff. Um, and they worked heavily on propagandizing, especially the younger officers of the army, to kind of win them over, who are, like, they're looking for they wanted to be part of a great army, not just kind of like peacetime to the army. And so there's three of them who actually are fomenting, trying to kind of win people over to the thing. Kind of the idea of like, oh, we'll take over the army and then we'll violently overthrow the Germans, this democratic German state, the Weimar Republic, and they get caught, they get put on trial, and they actually end up calling Hitler as a witness. And Hitler, he doesn't give a shit about these three guys. He throws them under the bus, saying he deplores what they did, and then uses the platform to say how he supports the army. And he only wants to take power in legal things, and then he wants to raise up this wonderful army on its own, not nothing to do with the SA, his paramilitary things. Like, no, it's all about the army and how great. Basically, butters them up, and wins over more of the army. He's a monster. Hitler is obviously a fucking monster, but he's also just a smart politician, human being that is ruthless and is using every mean possible to push his program of absolute power and absolute bigotry and absolute control onto this country that has Shire's done a good job of showing all the kind of the seeds of it, going, World War the World War One, the Great Depression, um, just sort of the intellectual stuff, of going back, of like, all the kind of the gross stuff that was kind of circulating around, the idea of war being a purifying force, coming from, is it Hegel? I think it's from Hegel. That coming from stuff that's like, just like, you look at that and you think how much kind of someone like Hitler took from stuff like that, but also just, bizarre anti-Semitic stuff, all the kind of the Aryan race bullshit. Um, Aryans not actually being Europeans, but that's what gets twisted into just like, nonsense. But all kind of coming together in this person of this guy who, great orator and also a great organizer. That's the other thing, is how much they hammered the Nazi Party into a good organization, a shadow government in waiting, ready to take over, which I guess is what Shire will be showing us pretty soon. We're getting to that point where the Great Depression is decimated everything. The Democratic parties that are in charge can't get anything going. They decide to call an election, at which point everybody in the center loses votes, and everybody on the extreme left and on the extreme right gain votes. And as the communists get more power, they're like probably number three if the Nazis are number two party. Um, that makes the army and the big industrialists really nervous, because we got the communists over here, and things are pushing more and more towards, let's put Hitler in charge. And oh, he's got all this other stuff, but I mean, as Schreier says throughout this book, Hitler Hitler speaks Hitler spells out everything very clearly what he's going to do. It's just that nobody takes it seriously because it's such fucking bizarre stuff. But no, he has a plan. It's Mein Kampf, really lays things out of how he's going to do things, and um, the people who put him in power didn't give a fuck. They just cared about their own stuff. They cared about the army, cared about being a great army, and the financiers cared about, the industrialists cared about industry and keeping the commies out. Yeah, yeah. So inexorable is a word that comes up in this book, and it's like, yeah, but how? I mean, it's like, is inexorable now where we are at the moment? I don't know. But yeah, yeah. So that's my check-in for this uh, first. My check-in at the 10% mark. No, 11%. 11% mark of the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shire. more videos later.